Okay, all right then. Yes. Good afternoon. Exactly. Okay. Well, let me, since I don't have a lot of time, let's move on before I'm waved at, you know. Yes. Well, the iPhone really is an innovation because we did have phones, but then these wise guys thought they could add value and other operations and processes to the phone. You know, they made it smart, and then they added all a bundle of other processes, and so that really is an innovation. But the pen is an invention. But the cross pen or the Parker pen or whatever, these are innovations, making, or even the smart pen. We now have pens which you can store, they have a memory, or they have a laser pointer and all that. These are all adding value to the humble pen that was invented some years back. So that is one hurdle we may need to cross to make a distinction between invention and innovation. Now, the other aspect is our colleague from, I've forgotten the university, our colleague, the engineer who was saying that maths may not be critical. Fred, okay, Fred. He touched on something very, very important, and that is the way we do business in our universities. If really we are to imbibe the culture of innovation, then we need to rethink and realign our curriculum towards that process. What do I mean by this? There's the aspect now which is being bandied around about multi-certification. Many of our universities may not be able to provide a platform whereby a student coming in would go through the mainstream program, 4-year or 5-year BEng, mechanical or civil, and also provide professional assistance. So what we're thinking about now is you can still have that process where you go year 1, level 2, up to year level 4. But then parallel to that, if the university or the faculty cannot provide those facilities, you can bring in a service provider, for example, in electrical engineering or any of the engineering courses, to provide instruction on computer networking, Microsoft networking, and if it's in accounting, bring in ACCA. So by the end of the day, you'll get your BEng and perhaps part 2 of your accounting, and so on and so forth. So by the time you end the program at year 5, you would have your BEng, and in addition, certification in either Cisco network or Microsoft and so on. So you then become more marketable. And you'd have started thinking about how then do I use these packages to innovate or to make my practice more efficient. So looking at the curriculum and seeing how we can bring in multi-certification can be another pathway to triggering that aspect of innovative thinking. But of course, these would require funding. As our colleague mentioned the last time, the driver to make these successful would have to be funding. Then, I'm told it's a very short presentation I have to make. There's also the aspect or the adage which we all suffer from, publish or perish. But that is changing gradually. There's a new adage now which says patent, publish, and prosper. So the 3 Ps. you go into research, you patent, and of course, once you've patented, through your IP and your copyright and benefits, you can actually publish. And whenever your patent is being referred to or being used, monies would roll in. So the publish or perish is slowly transforming to patent, publish, and prosper. And that is what would then trigger the aspect of innovation. Because if you need to publish, if you need to patent, then there has to be that aspect of innovation and creativity or a newness in the field of endeavor. Thank you.
Patent, publish, and prosper. I like the last P most. Engineer Dr. Celestina.
Well, yeah, hello. Well, I don't have a presentation. I think the question, I have 3 questions to ask. Each of us, we are discussing innovation, and we all seem to think we should innovate. So the question I'm asking is, why are we not? That is you. Those of us here in this room, we are engineers. We've been trained. We know innovation is good. Why are we not innovating? That is my first question. And the second question I also want us to answer through this discussion is, what is the best environment for innovation? What kind of atmosphere do we innovate in? Because, you know, I read about, is it Apple? I read that, you know, their offices are designed a certain way. Okay. I understand that even in the offices, they use roller blades to walk, you know, travel around or whatever in the office space. The young people there, you know, I see a lot of you in suits and stuff like that. Their dressing is freestyle. So I think I'm just curious to know, what should be the atmosphere in which we would innovate? Okay, GHIE, presidency, age band. What atmosphere can we innovate? So that's the second question. The third one, I heard him talk about funding. And I'm thinking of innovations in the banking sector. Now, there are innovations in raising funding. We are Africans. We know that the government will not support innovations. Not that they don't, I don't know. They will not accept that. We must find innovative ways to fund so that we can move on.
Honorable is here.
Okay. Well, yeah, so I think we must also discuss, because we always talk funding. There must be innovative ways to fund. You know, now on Facebook, people do GoFundMe or whatever they call it. Somebody dies, they find a way of raising money. Strangers, total strangers, right? So we can also discuss innovative ways for funding so that next year when we meet, we will not be talking about funding again, because we must accept that as for funding, it is not coming from anywhere except we innovate. So those are my 3 points.
Thank you very much. I mean, when you made your point, I remember Engineer Kallian's sister, Charlotte Engman. There was once we were in a meeting, and everybody, there's no funding for the sector. There's nothing we can do, and the sector is collapsing. And she said, anybody who comes and says there's no funding, it means you are confused. Because you know there's no funding, and you've accepted to do the job, and you are complaining that there's no funding. Find the funding, otherwise you are confused and you are useless. And so the presentation we had before, the new chief executive has actually been able to, those who missed it, the new chief executive of CWSA gave us a presentation. Last year, since he took over, he has employed over 700 people, and they are not using consolidated fund to pay them. They are raising money themselves from running systems which were considered unprofitable to pay the people. That is the kind of thing that we are supposed to do. And just to add, that session, we had 2 people here, the only 2 people here who are Order of the Volta. He is Order of the Volta. He's an engineer. He's a member of the institution. He's an engineer. The head of state of this country has given him Order of the Volta, and he has also been given another award for an invention that he made, which he patented. And we have another one pending. Thank you very much. So I'm just a facilitator. Another one, engineer doctor. So these are all engineer doctors and engineer professors. When they finish talking, we'll show them that even with, we haven't done the last degree, we know some.
Thank you very much, Harold. I don't have too much to add because I think there's a lot that have been said. And maybe I'll borrow from the Nigerian professor, because this afternoon I was just talking about, Sierra Leonean professor, because this afternoon I was just talking about a toothbrush. And so maybe the question to ask pretentiously is that, is a toothbrush an invention or an innovation? Because just a few weeks ago, I just went somewhere, and all I saw was that they said they are selling charcoal toothbrush with charcoal. So this is the latest fad in Europe. And on the shelves, all the toothbrush and toothpaste had charcoal in it. And I said, but when I was young, we used to do plantain, and you hit it, and then you add charcoal, and it's supposed to brighten your teeth. And now it's like a big craze in Europe. Everybody is selling this from Colgate, one of their latest designs. And I said, why? I was very surprised. I mean, not that I knew I was going to be on this panel, but I bought it and I said, wow. Then another place, they are selling activated carbon. You can put it in your fridge, you can put it in anything, and then it takes away the smell. Or it solves the problem. Now, okay, this one I won't recommend. Even people are selling charcoal that people can drink to cleanse their system. And I thought to myself, this is something that we've been doing back home. What happened? The same way, a few weeks ago, on Twitter, I saw a World Bank publication promoting container-based sanitation, which is like, well, I called it a glorified pan latrine. Then I said to myself, this is very strange, because 147 years ago, in Kumasi, every house had a pan latrine or a bucket latrine. And now we are struggling so much. We banned it in 2010, that by maybe 2015, everything should be phased out. But now you go to Haiti, you go to Kenya, you go to different places, companies are promoting container-based. And even in Kumasi, we have what we call Clean Team. Unilever is spearheading it. So what was the problem with it? Maybe the issue was it doesn't look nice to pick, it's unsafe to pick, where they dump it is not good, and all that. But the question is, why didn't we solve those issues around it and say, okay, then let's discard it? So I think for me, the question I want to ask is, what is our mindset and what is innovation really? What is it? Is it something totally different, or is it rather a different approach to doing things? And so when we begin to say we want to be innovative, we want to be innovative, sometimes I just want to say it's not about doing something totally new, but it is about doing things a little bit differently. And it comes back to the point that engineer Dr. Kwame Boakye was making. What is the value addition? What problem are you trying to solve? Everybody says, let's do recycling, let's do recycling. But recent research is telling us that maybe that's not even where to go. The place to go is biodegradable, because when you recycle plastic, after 2 or 3 times, you can't recycle again, and it's still going to become microplastics. So now cassava is being used as what? A biodegradable packaging material. Certain sugars, certain enzymes are being used. But for all you know, and to be honest, yesterday I saw a picture, unfortunately I couldn't bring it. In Indonesia, they are using plantain wrappers to do packaging. I'm like, what? We've been doing that here in Ghana, I mean, so many years ago. So really, is it that we don't know, or we are not confident of what we know, or we don't allow science to back what we know? So it comes to the environment for innovation and the kind of evidence we are building to help us move forward with the brilliant ideas that we have. Because I believe Ghanaians have ideas. Ghanaians are smart, and then we can be able to take forward innovation if we have the right environment. Just a quick point before I end. One of the things, just very last quickly, is the process itself, innovation systems and the process. I think something like this conference, I usually promote what is called the Learning Alliance, but having a platform like this where we all talk and brainstorm is a good point to bring a lot of ideas. But one important thing is to begin to take it forward to the next steps. There are going to be a lot of good ideas coming from here. How are we as an association going to move it forward to the next step? And perhaps one of our subgroups should begin to take key important takeaways from our conference, because I think we've had a lot of good ideas coming from here, right from yesterday when I watched online, and this morning when I listened to everything. I think we are really doing very well, and we need to build the space to take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. When the people go to school and they get PhD, you say come and talk to us, then start by asking us questions.
Thanks. I was just asked about 5 minutes ago to join the panel. Now, listening to what's been happening today, remember I said to you yesterday, there's 2 groups of engineers, those that are in construction and those that are not. And I think you're beginning to feel a bit threatened. I certainly feel a bit threatened. I don't invent toothbrushes and all the rest of it, if you know what I mean. So let's try and take you into my world, which is a little bit different. Okay. Now being in the built environment, we've got to think about innovation slightly differently, because we're not going to develop a product. What we're going to do is to use innovative practices which will involve the use of new or alternative approaches. Sometimes I think it's the alternative approach is the innovation. And some of the things that would come out, and why we're going to do that, is to address emerging needs or challenges. Now, I've also sort of thought a little bit about this, and what is innovative practice? Innovative practice is anything that's different from the traditional or conventional, and any idea or practice or objective can be innovative as long as it is perceived as new by the innovator. The person who's going to use it must see it as new. We've not done it before. And I think that's where you were saying, like, oh, that, you know, we've been doing it for years here. But what you've been doing for years here, nobody knew about there. So I think we've got to think a little bit about some of the questions about how do we convert new ideas into standard practice. And I think this is what the institution should be doing. How do we share these things to get things along? And I think that where the starting point is the route by which new ideas are taken up and to become finally involved in practice involved someone doing the first full-scale test. Someone who's got to be brave enough to be the guinea pig. Because remember, if you're going to try and do something new, the boss is going to say, is it going to work? You know, can you guarantee the outcome? Sometimes you've got to jump off the cliff and do it. Then the next thing you've got to do is report the first demonstration project results to allow them to take up by others, and then the first follow-up project where someone uses the results on their own, and then you're going to have the broader dissemination. So the job is not innovative until someone else has actually taken it up and it becomes into standard practice. And I think this is what one has got to try and do. It's something that's very close to my heart. I'm at the moment involved in South Africa in supporting infrastructure improvements in all our universities, and I go around to the universities. So let me give you a concrete example that those of you that are in the built environment don't feel so bad about not inventing something. We have a common problem, like I don't know if it's the same problem in your universities, is universal access. How do you get people with disabilities to get to the lecture theatres on the higher floors? Very expensive to put a lift in on the outside of the building. You put the lift in the outside of the building. What happens is all the students use it, and not those with the wheelchairs or those that really need the disability. So I was at the University of Northwest last week on a visit, and they showed me what they had done. You know, a lot of staircases have a square well in the middle. They've now put in, they found in Sweden, made a lift at a fraction of the price of one that would have to be put on the outside of the building, which everybody would use. You've now got the finger technology that you've got to, those that are people with disability, their fingers are printed, they can push the button to get into the lift, and the lift goes up slower than walking up the stairs. Now, isn't that an innovation? I mean, I think it's brilliant. It's at a fraction of a cost. Now, what I would like to do is, how do I get that conveyed to other universities? Because everybody's sitting with the same problem. So if we share it around, we're going to improve and deliver better value for society. I can give you another quick example that I saw was stunning. I went to University of Cape Town at the end of last year. And, you know, students need, we spoke about yesterday, and people talking about collaboration, working in groups, changing this individual teaching. But where do the kids go and work in groups? Where's the facilities in the university? Someone just said, you know, all the old buildings we had in Cape Town were these massive foyers for the grand entrance to get into the lecture theatres. They've converted all of those, put a few plug points in. You've got your ICT that you can connect to the web, put tables around, and you know, suddenly all those unusable spaces become usable, and I see students working in them. Now, there's another innovation. You don't have to build new infrastructure, just do things smarter. So all I want to say is, I think my question is, how do we identify, how do we communicate, and how do we bring it into standard practice that it becomes a normal thing with us? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ron. Okay, the other started with a question, he ended with a question. So they are expecting answers from us, not questions as well. Contributions, things that we are looking at as innovation, which we can also take up to help have an impact. And yes, innovations, I was going to say practical, but sometimes what I may think is impractical is actually what is going to be the solution. So,
thank you very much. I'm trying to attempt to answer the question on the funding. I would suggest that, in fact, the government should try to deregulate. The government should try to deregulate the usage of our pension funds. Because if you read much about Silicon Valley, where the technology in America is done, it is this venture capital funds that help in developing those technologies. Because investing in new technology is a risky zone. No investor will like to go in there without certain things in place. So I think we should deregulate the pension funds, and so that we'll have a very good ecosystem for venture capital funding to thrive.
We didn't get your name.
Engineer Isifu Bababu.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm Abdul Karim. My point is on setting up the system to be able to adapt, to copy from other organizations that engineers in Ghana come in contact with. The reason is that if you look at most of the projects happening in this country, the big ones always go to foreign companies. Construction unit developed by a consultant called ULS. I don't know, maybe somebody would know. And the fact is that it's been found to be cheaper at the end of the day in doing earthworks. But I still look around after 4 years and I see only them doing this integrated construction unit. So basically we are not taking the technologies that come into the country from big projects that we contract. So we need to set up the system, maybe from the institution, to be able to adapt technologies that come in, we take it and then we develop it further. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You know, Dr. Kwame Boakye said sometimes we should learn to steal, but maybe we don't like to steal like that. We steal other things rather.
Thank you very much. I'm Engineer Demola Olorunfemi. Just like a few people have mentioned, the lady there mentioned the case that we should realize that government will not give us money. Professor Sawyer did mention PPP, publish, patent, and prosper. So they were moving that way. I was talking to my brother in the afternoon at the break. Apart from what government is not doing, we're not helping matters in our schools. Of course, I'm from Nigeria, and it's almost the same thing. I teach at the Lagos State Polytechnic. I've been doing that for 30-something years now. So now, the selection process, I want to commend the Fred. The selection process of our head of institutions is faulty. It is not enough for you to have a PhD and professor and all of that. A school is a business, and there are stakeholders. At the end of the day, you must be seen to be making profit in all areas. But that's not the case in Nigeria, and I guess by extension in Ghana. But the private schools are making the difference, including Nigeria. My son is in a private school. They do things differently. Of course, we pay more, but even in the public school, our managers can do better. A dean and HOD should go to relevant industries once a week and encourage others to go. But we just sit down and expect things to roll. we must, as institutions and as individuals, find a way to encourage the selection process that gives you business-minded people as head of institutions. I don't know if we know that the head of London Business School owns a single degree. Is a Mr. The current that tells you that those who run those places know that it is not about how much grammar you can blow. And that is why in all our institutions, Polytechnic University, you find so many items.
Yeah, good afternoon. This is a very interesting discussion, and it's very dear to our heart. What we lack in Africa is an innovation ecosystem. I think Doc has hinted at it, that we need the enabling environment. We need a mindset change. We need a paradigm shift, where we must first of all respect indigenous knowledge system. We must fight as engineers from our corner, from our resources. We must deal and only innovate with the things that we know. We have become, through a mindset process of colonialization, tended to respect inferior technology, inferior stuff from what we have, especially when it's from the West. So it's that paradigm shift that we want to do. That's the first thing. And in the innovation we must also realize our forefathers, they did not leave the Stone Age because they ran out of stones, right? They found a better way. They went into iron because then they would have better weapons the spears would be sharper. And we must also do the same. We must have that shift and examine the technologies that we are using. She talked about recycling. Why are we recycling in the first place? Why can't we have a philosophy from the cradle to the cradle when you design? Why would you want to design something that is a gem block, plastic that would fill your oceans, kill your species? Why would you do that? So it is this design thinking, the kind of process thinking that we need to have as engineers. And it's not there in our training. There is a missing element, entrepreneurship. It's not there. Contracts management is not there. So when you are consulting engineers, 90% of your time you are managing contracts. And you have not been trained in that. And the lawyers will have a field day. You see? So we create also, look at the disputes in construction, unnecessary disputes. We should have avoidance of any dispute whatsoever in construction if we are properly set up for that. So I believe as Africa, as an institution, let us work and have this paradigm. Let's have this discussion. But it must not only be a discussion. We must build the ecosystem. President, GHIE, please build that environment. Build the environment where innovation is rewarded, where innovation is applauded. It's something that we need to think about, and as far we are learning, we'll try and work with all of you and make sure that Africa, with its youngest population, becomes the big hub of innovation for tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Adeolu Odushote from Nigeria. It's interesting how the discussions have been on in the meeting since yesterday, and the way it's going. I believe one of the things that a participant out of here this year should go out with is that we're seeing the different sides of engineering that makes it go beyond the esoteric, special thing people had been thinking about before now. And I'm looking at it from the other side of the coin, from what the president of FAO said. He had talked about our forefathers coming out of the Stone Age and going into iron and so on. But in Africa, I think also there's the other part of the limiting mindset, something that shrouds invention, innovation in secrecy. You know the herbalist mentality. You have a herb that should just be good for all, and until there's a special incantation or something, that limits others from getting into it. And perhaps at times, in our thinking and in our work, in the different areas we're engaged, and particularly as engineers, we forget that we bring in these aspects in the way we deliver things. I had a very wonderful time over lunch with my friend Enoch this afternoon, and we're talking about the place of youths and how things get passed across to them. And engineers, I'm going to ask us to be conscious about how we are passing the baton. When it looks like things are shrouded in secrecy, and the young ones are waiting to be able to break into that, rather than having this special invitation, as it were, the welcome, as it were, the free environment of the meeting of minds, the mixing of minds, and it makes it something difficult to get it into, then it becomes limiting. Innovation has to do with the rethink, the mindset that makes things play around, though guided but freely, getting the kind of results that we want. And it's going to move from the ways we've culturally thought about things. Who would have known that charcoal would become so glorified, Colgate and all that. And there's so many other things that were shrouded in secrecy that are waiting to bless the world. And I pray and I think the kind of going out of here that we'll do will launch us into that freedom that will make more things happen positively. Thank you.
Yes, I just wanted to add the fact that I'm very worried. From time to time, we get swallowed with buzzwords. And somehow people throw those buzzwords and we all get intoxicated with it. I think over the last few years is innovation. So everybody talks innovation. Sometimes we talk sustainability. Then resilience. The question is, as engineers, let's have a common sense approach to solving our basic problems. Have we got our basics right? I'm not saying that we should not parachute ourselves into the new age. But the question was asked, I think from Patrick, that where are we in the revolution stage? Where are we right now? Are we still in the Stone Age? I mean, if you look at the technological advancements that we have seen in mobile telephony over the last 30 years. I mean, in 1984, nobody was using ATM even in the UK. Today is different. In Ghana, not long ago, if you wanted to call somebody outside, you had to go to High Street for 3 days, and then they'll wind the thing like that. Unfortunately, those of us who are civil engineers, and civil engineering is notoriously stagnant with moving on. And so I'm not surprised that he talked about that. If you look at the methods that we use, it's still very manual, you know, and so we are locked in time a bit. It's time for us to know that if we don't move, the world will move without us. But we have to be very conscious of what we need to do. Because if we don't sort out our basics and we don't create that mentality, I see public buildings today in Ghana in 2017, and I look at the structure and it looks like 1930. And I begin to ask myself, what were the engineers doing? What were the architects doing? What is the planning doing? What are we doing to ourselves? Because if you go even into a university and you go to the engineering faculty, you want to see buildings that inspire you into the future. Is that not what you want to see? That's not what I see when I go to some of our places, engineering institutions. So I think we should learn the common sense approach and get back to our basics and sort out very simple problems. Thank you very much.
I'm Engineer Dr. Kopi Alex Momo, the Executive Secretary of Nigerian Society of Engineers. My contribution is in relation to Engineer Dr. Bauchi's presentation. Two key issues. Engineers in political leadership is to creating the necessary environment for innovation to thrive. Because if you look from the examples he gave, you will see that political leadership is what has brought about a turnaround in most of the developed countries. And unless we consciously begin to promote engineers, our members, to get into political leadership so that they can turn things around for us, we will not go far. Now, I'll give you share an experience with you from what we have just started doing in Nigeria. The last elections, we started the promotion of engineers into political leadership by supporting some candidates financially. And the result of that election, as of today, we have 5 governors leadership that will help to look at engineering practice policies and bring out national engineering practice laws that will guide the practice of engineering. And I think this is something that we also need to begin to do as more and more. And not, the final thing is innovation management talent in their endeavors. But as a group, we are not creating the desired on national economic development. And we need to begin to manage innovation successfully. One thing we are doing now in the Nigerian Institute of Engineers, say, look, let us begin to create an inventory of engineering innovations by our members. Then we have identified funding agencies. Now we are going to use the corporate image of the Nigerian Society of Engineers to reach out to these funding agencies on behalf of our members who have brought up very innovative.
In Ghana, hopefully from next year, we'll be electing our MMDCs, Metropolitan Municipal and District Chief Executives, from 2020 or 2021. So, ED, you have to start grooming people to identify and grooming people to those elections. That's your colleague who has said it. So,
all right, thank you very much. My name is Engineer Boy. I'm a civil engineer, a project management professional. And in projects, we learn something very